So you guys have all heard of these secret millionaires, right? You know, these people that kind of look a little raggedy, wear some jeans with holes in them, hair hasn't been cut in, 2-3 months, drive some 15, 20-year-old car, and just in general, they look like they're one bad day away from living on the streets. But in reality, they have more money than you or I could figure out what to do with. Well, there's also the genius equivalent of the secret millionaire. And it turns out I know one. So allow me to introduce you to my friend, Alan.
Hey, find me at yankumropes.com.
Well, Alan is the founder of Yankum Ropes that makes these kinetic ropes, soft shackles, winch lines, and winch fair leads that I have absolutely fell in love with. But their newest product is the Offset recovery ring. And this is essentially a snatch block for synthetic line. There's recovery rings for synthetic line have been around for a long time. This one, you can see the hole is offset, and that stops the whole ring from spinning around on the soft shackle that goes through the center and allows the rope to slide through the groove in the end. Good idea, yeah, and definitely taking the recovery ring idea a whole step further than where it was. But that's not the part that brings out the secret genius. You see, a few nights ago, Alan called me at like midnight or something. It wasn't exactly midnight, but it was a whole lot closer to midnight than it was to noon. Either way, he called me, he goes, Casey, I was laying in bed, I thought of something, I can't sleep, I need your input. And I'm like, okay, what's that? He goes, these recovery rings that we made, he goes, they're not one snatch block, they're two. And I'm like, Alan, you need to go to bed. It's late, your mind's all messed up. Go to sleep, call me back in the morning. But he did not. He insisted on explaining his idea to me, and that's when I realized that I knew a secret genius. Let me show you what he's talking about. All right, we have got some stuff going on now. We have my Jeep TJ6, which is the best Jeep that Jeep never made, running the Badlands Apex 12,000 pound winch, coming up here to the Yankum Ropes recovery ring, which this is a configuration that anyone who's familiar with off-road recovery and synthetic lines very well knows, using the recovery ring as a snatch block, and it is going back anchored to my four-wheel drive wrecker. Now, anyone who does, off-road recovery, winching type stuff, rigging, knows that this is how you can double the pulling power, or more accurately, reduce the line load when winching or pulling. Now, why do we have two separate anchor points? Well, it's because what we're hooked to is my 30,000 pound NRC rollback. And yes, it weighs 30,000 pounds. Every time I say that in the video, someone comes along, no, it doesn't weigh 30,000 pounds. I drove a rollback, it was 18,000, whatever. This truck is 30,000 pounds. I've had it on a scale many times. It's 12,000 pounds on the steer axle, 18,000 pounds on the rear axle, empty. I'm not a secret genius, but even I know that adds up to 30,000 pounds. That's what it weighs, done. But anyway, it's obvious that my 4,500 pound Jeep is not going to sit still while I try to pull a 30,000 pound truck. So we have the line doubled back to my 11,300 pound wrecker. Now, in addition to those two, I got my Ram 2500 anchored to the back of the TJ. This is 7,200 pounds plus another 1,100 pounds in there, plus 4,500 pounds there, plus 11,300 pounds here is 24,100 pounds versus 30,000 pounds. But we have a lot better anchorability on this end because we have 4 tires all locked up, 4 tires all locked up, 4 tires all locked up, plus a spade anchored into the ground. And on this one, only the back axles have brakes. The front axles on big trucks do not have parking brakes. So in theory, this combination of vehicles can pull this vehicle backwards as long as we can create the pulling power with the winch. Now, there's all kinds of math and formulas and all that out there to figure out the amount of weight that's on these tires, plus the surface they're on, plus the degree of the slope, and blah, 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 to get your resistance factor. We don't care about any of that because that's not the point of this. The point of this is, how do we create more pulling power with less gear? Hey, Future Casey here, and there is one very important thing that I realized later on in the video, which is right now in my real time, that is the literal key to making everything I'm about to show you work. So make sure you kind of like stay tuned for that, or this is all kind of pointless. Because I wouldn't be comfortable putting this much stress on just 2 parts of line. I would want to 4 or possibly 5 part this line. But that would take a snatch block here plus another snatch block there to come back to here to another snatch block to go back to there to make a 4-part line, and then another snatch block to come back with a 5-part line, which would mean to 5-part the line, we would need 4 snatch blocks, and to 4-part the line, we would need 3 snatch blocks. That's a lot of stuff, and that's where secret genius comes in. Because this is not 1 snatch block. This is 2. Let me show you how. Okay, I re-rigged it. We now have 1 line coming off the Jeep. It goes around the recovery ring as normal. It goes all the way back here to the second recovery ring anchored to the wrecker, goes around it as normal, and comes all the way back to the center of the first recovery ring that it goes around and comes back to dead-ended at the recovery ring through the center again. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts of line using only 2 snatch blocks. In any conventional sense, this would require 3. Now, 2 important things to note in this setup. 1, the lines are close to each other, but they do not touch each other. There's space between them the whole way, and it will stay there as you pull because the relationship between this and that and the spacing between them never changes. 2, the radius that the rope travels around the inside right here is big enough that it will not hurt the rope. This much bigger radius is obviously far more ideal and better for the rope, but it's not going to hurt it, especially since by adding all these lines, you're taking pressure off of each line, so you're not putting nearly as much pull in there. Is it perfect? No. Is it going to hurt it? No. So yes, I'm standing close, but I have to show you. See that right there? Check it out. This rope travels around the outside. This rope travels around the inside. On this end over here, it just travels around the outside. Now the magic part of it. It is dragging the truck. Tire slide, tire slide. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, the truck's sitting on a bit of a downhill and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, that works. This is so freaking cool and such a genius idea that we need to take it farther. So let me take all this rigging apart, re-rig it, and show you what else we can do with it. Okay, we repositioned the truck. It is now sideways. You can see, this is a big truck. And it is sideways to the Jeep and the wrecker and the anchor off the back. And we are running a rim sling into the rim of the truck. We're gonna drag this whole thing straight sideways against those tires. So what we have now is a 5-part line using only 2 snatch blocks. So we have our main line coming off the Jeep, runs around this ring just like normal, comes back up here, goes around second ring just like normal. Then it comes all the way back here, goes through center of ring, then it's down here coming all the way back, goes through center of ring again, and then our 5th part goes all the way up, and I have it tied into the frame of the truck back there. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of line. Again, none of them are touching. They all sit real close here. No contact at all, so no issues there. Let's pull. Jeep's loading up, wrecker's loading up. That truck's pulling. What's gonna give first? Lots of line is moving. Oh, look at that wrecker dig in. Come on. Look at, there it goes. Oh, those tires are biting hard. I should really start the Jeep. Look at, this truck is sliding. Okay, that battery's probably dead. Let me go start it. Problem is, this is a manual transmission, so I have to have it in neutral and the parking brake sucks. So I'm gonna leave you guys here to watch. Okay, so what we're gonna do, it's not ideal, but I have to go sit in that Jeep with my foot on the brake, and then you guys can still watch this and those. All right, I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. So I got that tire kind of wedged into the wrecker to help so that can stay running in neutral. That truck is anchored in hard. That's anchored in hard. Check it out. This whole truck is sliding sideways off a 5-part line setup. If I had a better battery and alternator in that Jeep, it's all like basically stock stuff as far as that goes. We could pull a lot more and just drag this thing right over. But the point is, look at this. It does it. I told you, secret genius. Okay, as you can see, we drug the truck, what was that, 4 feet, 3 feet? We'll just go on the side of, let's say 3 feet. Since we're at a 5-part line, that means for every 1 foot the truck moved, 5 times that many feet went into the winch. So we pulled 15 feet of winch line in. So this is the important one right here. Everybody's worried about heat. 60 degrees. This ring here had 15 feet of line go across it with hard pull on it. And it is at, actually let's go where the rope is now, we can see. 40 degrees. The rope is 60 degrees. The inside one here, the rope is 60 degrees. The ring is right about the same. If we go over here, this one had less line pulled across it because obviously the farther we get through these pulleys, the less line is actually traveling. 54, the rope is, so the rope and the ring are about the same. On the inside we have, yeah, right in the 50. So nothing is hot. This rope is slack, by the way. I backed it off before I came in here, stepped over it. Okay, that is impressive to pull this big, huge truck straight sideways like that with such a minimal amount of gear. That is the impressive part here, is how little gear is actually being used. To make a 5-part rigging line setup with your traditional snatch blocks and shackles and all that stuff, you know how much gear you would have to have and how much it would weigh to do this? Because look at this, we have 1, 2 aluminum recovery rings, which weigh nothing, and 1, 2, 3 soft shackles. That's it. To create a 5-part pull, 2 aluminum rings and 3 soft shackles. That weighs nothing. That is hardly any gear to carry, and you have the ability to do this type of rigging. Now, of course, I'm not counting rim sling and big J hooks. I did stop here because this was starting to pull into my control box. I didn't want to do that, but I'm not counting those because those are like specific to hooking up to a big truck, and whatever you're pulling is going to be different. So as far as gear you have to carry to create this elaborate and powerful of rigging, let's pull all this apart and I'll show you in my hand. This is it, and I'm even using the big extra long double soft shackles just because that's what I happen to grab. So you could even like eliminate half of the material here. This is 1 or 2 pounds at most, but that's it. 1, 2, 3 soft shackles, 2 rings, and you can do some very creative rigging. Now at this point, I know what you're saying, but Casey, can't you just use any old recovery ring like what you can get on Amazon or from any other seller out there? Let's find out. Okay, so I got it set up with the normal like Amazon or any other type of rings you get set up in the same configuration. And you have to bear with me, it's getting super windy out here at big gusts, so if you hear the wind noise, I'm sorry. I got this little fuzzy thing, we'll see how it does. But initial thoughts already, look at this. The hole in the center is very much bigger than this one, and the outside is very much smaller than this one, meaning this one has a heck of a lot more metal to hold. If you go to the bottom of that groove in there to the end of the diameter in here, that is not a lot of like meat in there to actually be holding. I would kind of almost be afraid of ripping one of these apart. This one is so thick. Also look at like the thickness this way. This is so much beefier and thicker. I don't think this would rip apart before some of that rigging does. This one, it's kind of a bit of a concern I have. Number 2, and this one's pretty important. Watch the ring. The ring is spinning this way, which is pulling the line, this line here, that's the top line going up, to this side. And then when you get to this end, Obviously that line is going around this way. This ring is spinning that way, which is pulling this line to that side, and they end up touching here. Not hard, but now you have this line is rubbing on the soft shackle as it pulls past it. That's not okay. With the Yankum ones that are designed to not spin and sit still, plus being the far bigger diameter, it holds all those lines apart from each other. That's important. Okay, I'm gonna back up on this one and we're gonna pull. See what happens. So it's pulling the truck because we're doing a 4-part line. That's good. You hear that sound? That, I don't know if you could hear that because the microphone's on me. That sound, I don't want to get too close, is the ropes rubbing going through there because of the way these spin and are so much smaller. That is friction in the rope, and that is dangerous under tension. So I don't know how I can make you guys hear that when the microphone is right here. Let me go over here. Obviously the winch and the 4-part setup is still creating the same amount of force, but how this is reacting is very different. See the rub? You hear that? I am getting back. Okay, we're done. No more of that. That's scary. And I don't want to break my rope either, so. Okay, don't do this with those Amazon recovery rings. Yeah. Okay, of all people, Alan actually just called me in the middle of filming that and distracted me, so I forget exactly where I was. But I got all that rigging taken apart, and I got to get the Jeep pulled back off the tow truck here. I wedged it into there to hold it still. And instead of just backing up, I thought I would show that since we can use the ring as an impromptu snatch block, the tow point can be as well. So we got our other Apex winch here on Old Faithful, and it helps if I turn on the remote. Okay, but look at that, snatch block. Okay, now for the important part that makes all of this work, and that is the fact that I don't have a hook or a metal thimble on the end of this winch line. By switching to the Yankum Fair lead that eliminates all of that and just hooks your winch line out here, you lose everything on the line, which allows you to fit it through the ring. And if you can't do that, none of this works. So in addition to all the other benefits of this Fair lead, everything I just showed you is one more. Actually, what's that? Like 10 more? I don't even know. A lot more. I love that thing. This was the brainchild of Nate Pickle with Dirt Lifestyle, who I still need to get up to Washington and go wheeling with. We're not like really that far apart, and we haven't made it happen yet, but we will. The other key to this whole thing is you have to have 2 rings, because the rope has to go around one and be able to go around another one to come back and go through the center of the first one. If you only have 1 ring, you only have 1 snatch block. But if you add a second ring, you now have 4 snatch blocks. So yes, to make all this work, you have to buy 2, but 2 is actually 4. So even though you're buying twice as many, you're getting twice as many as that, if that makes sense. One more thing I would like to point out, it's kind of irrelevant to that, but is very relevant to synthetic rope and those rings and this style of Fair lead. This is a different one I can show better because it doesn't show up nearly as much on those gray Yankum Fair leads. Is you can see the residue left behind from the rope pulling on the side or on the bottom of the winch. A lot of people think that is part of the winch line being rubbed off from friction and sticking to the side of the Fair lead or the winch rings. No. That is actually a coating that is put on the individual fibers of the winch line before it's spun and wound and weaved into line. And it's a protective coating. And you'll see a lot more of it on the Chinese winch line. Like this is actually a Harbor Freight winch line. Nothing wrong with them at all. That's why I leave them on the winch. I think most of my other winches all have the Yankum line. And you'll see this line is a darker color than the Yankum line. It's because it has a lot more of that coating on it. And my understanding, I could be very wrong on this, but the Chinese winch lines will have a lot more of that coating, just like a lot of like the metal parts and tools and stuff like that you get from Harbor Freight or other places like that have a lot more of like that oil coating on them. That's a protectant to protect on those metal parts, like the salty air of the sea, especially as they're getting transported, you know, all the way around the world. On the winch line, it's to protect from the elements in some way. I'm not exactly sure on all the scientifics, but it's a coating that when the line gets pulled around a hard edge with a lot of pressure on it, it's basically squeezing that coating out and it'll get left on here. Spray some WD-40 on it or anything on that, it'll come right off. That's not a big deal. It's not hurting anything. It's not your winch line coming apart. No big deal. So now, of course, I've got to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, which is not Yankum Ropes and not Harbor Freight with their Badlands winches. It is simply my curiosity and wanting to try things, figure stuff out, and learn things, which I learned two things today. One, that we can completely simplify our rigging while making it more effective at the same time, which is absolutely amazing. And two, that my friend Alan is a secret genius. That's pretty amazing too. So, since this video is not sponsored by Yankum Ropes, I won't even mention my Yankum Ropes affiliate link that is down in the description below.